Okay, you're live.
Great. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I hereby call this May 13th Annapolis Conservancy Board meeting to order. How about, just in case anyone's watching, we can just go around briefly and introduce ourselves. I'll start. I'm Joanna Ogburn, and I'm the chair of the Annapolis Conservancy Board. And I'm going to pass it off to Jackie. Saw you come off.
Hi, Jackie Giles, Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability for the city.
How about Linda?
Linda Frost, a board member.
Awesome. And Trudy?
Trudy McFall, board member.
Great. How about Racine? You're in my next box.
Hi, Racine Hodo, City of Annapolis, Environmental Programs Coordinator.
Oh, great. How about Tom?
Yeah, hi, you've got Tom Lippert, also a member of the board.
Great. And then let's see. Oh, we got a bunch of people. So how about Sally? You're able to come off? There she goes.
Hello, everyone. Sally Nash, Planning and Zoning. Thanks for having us here tonight.
Thanks for coming. Yeah. And how about Eric? Do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Eric,
Hey, everyone. Eric Lashinsky at Planning and Zoning, Chief of Comprehensive Planning.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. I realized I probably should specify which Eric I'm referring to. Would Eric B like to introduce yourself?
He might be en route, actually, but.
Oh, that's totally fine. Let's see. How about Ashley? I think we have everybody.
Ashley Leonard, Assistant City Attorney.
Great.
Evening.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having this excellent group. I'm really excited. If it's okay with everybody, I'm going to go ahead and switch to agenda items. I wanted to move up the third agenda item to start that and just do the ACB minutes later, so we can let Sally and Eric go once their portion is finished. Is that okay with everybody? Anybody have any concerns? Okay, all right. Well, so we're very lucky tonight. We have here with us Sally, Eric, and Eric to share with us some information about the update for the comprehensive plan for the city of Annapolis and how, let's see, to kind of talk about the conservation related goals, objectives, and metrics that they are working on for the plan. For board members who were here last year, you may remember we put together several different goals and strategies and sent forward those. I think I sent them around to you. If you have any questions, I can send them out again really quickly. But I asked Sally and Eric to come and sort of give us an update on where the comprehensive plan stands, what conservation pieces are in it, and how that relates to some of the ones we sent last year. So I will pass it off, I guess, to who should, Eric or Sally?
Yeah, I'll take it. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Was anybody from this group at the meeting last week that we did sort of it was an update on environmental goals for the comprehensive plan. So I tried to update this presentation a little bit in reference to the greenway map and the ideas behind that, and just things I thought you guys would be interested in. Just a quick overview of the schedule that we're working on for the comprehensive plan. We're aiming to share a draft set of goals, recommendations, and metrics at the end of this month that the public will be able to comment on. This is going to be through our website, where we have, kind of an ongoing archive of presentations and updates on our process. And so there'll be a way to participate in what we share and put in your comments. So that's what this kind of top line is referring to. We're going to continue to meet with boards, commissions, civic associations, really anybody who reaches out to us to kind of help refine the content of the comprehensive plan into the summer. And then we're aiming to have something that looks more like a plan document that you could hold in your hands, for example, in early fall, and that would have another kind of public review period We don't know yet when this might, go into an adoption process through city council. Could be after the election. We're not really sure, but this is kind of what we're working towards in terms of actually getting a coherent, believable plan together that people can support and feel like they had a contribution to. And so there's going to be a number of presentations to Planning Commission and City Council work sessions between now and September, and lots of opportunities to participate in those as well. Just a refresher here on the comprehensive plan and how it works. It's just kind of a simplistic view of it, but it does the trick. Essentially at the center of it is, how will the city use its land for the next 10, 20 plus years? So the land use chapter, and just generally how we're going to grow internally. We're not growing outward much here in Annapolis, pretty constrained. But we certainly have lots of properties in the city that could be redeveloped and redeveloped in a way that is more environmentally beneficial to the city and sustainable. Could be more fiscally beneficial to the city, all sorts of ways. So that's really the core of the comprehensive plan. But then you have these element plans that actually each represent a chapter in the structure that we have, and these are kind of mandated by the state Department of Planning for the most part. And then the outer ring, how will we actually put this into action? That's really the idea there. So we'll have action plans, and essentially itemize all of our recommendations. This is simply just acknowledging that even though we're structuring the comp plan along these chapters on the left, a lot of the issues don't really fit, the pressing issues of the city they don't really fit neatly within these chapters. And so those references, you really can kind of ultimately pick at every chapter and find references to the cross-cutting issues of the city. But for the purposes of structure, we have developed these 3 city visions: thriving city, functional city, adaptive city, and these are ways of being aspirational, but also organizing our values and how we see the city, and really what's going to what's going to be the foundation of our city moving forward. And so we develop these principles under each of these city visions, and the idea is that all of our goals and recommendations should tie back to these principles, which we think are pretty comprehensive. The structure is also, you could say, based on the fact that every chapter fits into every element fits into one of those 3 sections, and then each chapter has its own goals, metrics, and recommendations. And so the greenway map and the goals of the greenway factor in a number of these chapters, which is significant. I mean, it's and I think that's why we've been putting a lot of emphasis on this, and we hear from a lot of people who are curious about the status of the greenway map, because it does have relevance to a lot of different parts of the ultimate comprehensive plan. And this is trying to explain where it fits in. This was a slide that I developed just to kind of explain just broadly how the environmental focus plays into the comprehensive plan. So you can see, again, it's factoring into several of these chapters in different ways. It gives you a sense of where things fit. I think I caught everything in here, but this is just really just trying to summarize. And so, like, a typical goal based on this structure might be this is an actual example that we have in our draft that comes from the land use chapter. So it's actually I think it's called currently goal 6. They're not in order of importance. It could be goal 1. Maybe it should be. But this is specific to the greenway concept, and this is still in formation. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we hope will get some comments, and we can improve on it when we release the draft. The metrics are certainly hard to come to. We're still working out what makes sense, what appropriate benchmarks should be. But this just gives you a sense of how we're formulating these goals, metrics, and recommended actions. And now I'm going to actually share the greenway map because I have sort of next steps here, but I wanted to actually show you what that looks like. So we've been working with the contributions that came in from the survey that was done. We developed this is a spreadsheet that organizes the 103 recommendations, and we realized a couple of days ago that there are still more that need to go into that. There was a handout from the Environmental Commission that had some additional recommendations, and so we'll integrate those as well. But we organize all of those recommendations by their watershed. So it's the left column here, the ward that they're in. This next 2 columns are really just the nature of how the survey was set up. So there were these 2 options that you could, that ways of identifying why you were suggesting those sites, and so primary and secondary. This conflict column is kind of a work in progress. The idea here is just whether the site is developable or not, is kind of the main idea. There's a lot of sites that obviously that are not developed, floodplain areas or sensitive areas that might not make any sense for development. We tried to clarify.
Can I ask a question on that one? Can we ask a question and go along, or really wait?
Yeah, you can ask.
Why would you be doing the conflict? The goal of these is not to develop on them. Why is this conflict? I don't understand that. These are not all places that are deemed preservable, or what are you talking about? Identifying they aren't suitable for development.
Well,
to be suitable for development.
No, the intent is just to be mindful of whether there's a property interest in mind here. I would say, I don't know exactly how many of these sites that were identified. They're privately owned. They are zoned as something that could, they're not zoned as park space or they could be developed, and we just want to be, and maybe that makes them a priority for conservation. That the fact that they could be developed in the near future means that maybe we should be putting some energy into making the case for conservation tomorrow. That's really the intent here.
Okay, I get that. Maybe your words aren't quite right yet, but okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, your explanation was fine. I get it. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Are they threatened?
Yeah, threatened might be a good, that might be we could think about
okay.
that.
Good.
Yeah. So, there's property type, trying to be as clear as possible here. Vacant, contiguous with existing conservation easements, contiguous with existing parkland, whether they're in the critical area, whether they're in a flood zone. Here's the watershed again. Trail access, if that currently exists, and whether water access could be currently exist, whether they're adjacent to water or not. And then these were just other comments that people left. And there was that voting column, you may remember, and So I don't know how much value it has here, but some did get some more votes than others.
For those who might be confused about that, when you went on to use the tool, there was the ability to click like a little heart on something that somebody else had already submitted. So if you wanted to choose an area that somebody else had already recommended, you could sort of like it in the tool.
Yeah.
So that's what that voting column references. But we talked about it in the instructions that you could do that, but I think most people probably didn't notice that or didn't really think about it a ton. So I think what Eric is saying is, I take it with a grain of salt. I think with
It was a good, yeah, it was a good experiment in seeing how it would be used, but some of these got a few votes or not, but yeah. But so like going back to the map here, what we're showing, the legend is pretty, we're showing just kind of the basic, can't really see the bike lane information, but bike facilities, but we wanted to add that just to kind of show some of the connections that already exist or might exist between parcels. And, I could flip to different, map backgrounds here, but I think the idea is these lighter parcels are the identified sites from the Greenway map survey. The middle Kelly green are the city parkland sites, and then the dark green are the county. I think all county. I don't know if there's any state, but maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's starting. You can already start to see some of the corridors that might be possible in the future, which is exciting. It certainly helps to organize what we have. Actually, what's not here are the existing conservation easements that the Conservancy already has secured. So that's something that we would add to this. And then there's some other layers that I think would be valuable. I think, Joanna, is it through the county or the state that forest score, I think, was another?
Yeah, do you want me to talk about those extra layers now, or I don't want to?
No, I was trying to remember what there's basically.
That's actually through a separate mapping that was done by the Chesapeake Conservancy as part of the Greater Baltimore Wilderness Initiative.
Oh, okay.
But it uses state and all kinds of data.
I mean, we're trying to produce a map that'll be clear and helpful, but there are some other the basic ideas that there are some layers that could help to inform the context of these sites, and so we're going to continue to add those layers to this.
Do you think you've got all the city-owned stuff on here now? Because I'm being parochial and looking at my little Ward 2 and all our little Tucker Street extension that we have been dreaming in your planning process for years. At least I have been, that we'd have that access to the water. Oh,
Is it?
I just
Is that it?
Scale, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the city-owned stuff should be.
Oh, that's actually not. Maybe yes, Shipley. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes, thank you. Yeah. That's that's my ravine.
Good thing. Okay.
But anyway, I think the city owns that extension of Shipley that was in our sector plan to try to get a street end park that overlooks.
Oh, right here. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's the other end. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
I don't have to be do you think you've captured all the city owned so far, or are you still working?
I think the city you should scrutinize it. We can circulate this and it would be good for you to scrutinize it.
All right.
I think the city owned is probably pretty accurate, but
Okay. There is a city-owned layer that is in our Annapolis Conservancy Board interactive mapper that Sean pulled in, and Eric Borchers might have created initially. I'm not quite sure, but I don't know if you guys have pulled that into this Greenway map yet or not. But that is something that we have talked about doing. Trudy is pulling those into the Greenway map.
All right. I just neighborhood for a minute there. Just
question.
let's see, I guess the other thing to say, the way this works is that each of these sites, you click on it, you see the same information that I was just sharing in that spreadsheet. We have to adjust the window here. Some of the stuff gets cut off, but essentially that's the idea in terms of an interactive map. And there's no reason why this couldn't be accessible to the public. I think we're sort of, we want to be sensitive to sites that are privately owned. We haven't talked to the landowner, but I think maybe that's the ultimate goal, is for this to be a public thing. I think we're certainly including this in the comprehensive plan. And so that's just a question, I guess, right now. We want to look at the percentage of these that are privately owned. And that's, I guess, where the threatened or conflict thing comes in, is just, if we're going to go out and put something out that says it's a goal to kind of conserve it, we want to be sort of certain that it makes sense from the owner's perspective too. I mean, I think in some cases that's where there might be a difference of opinion, but
I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to ask. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to well, I'll provide some more information, but I just wanted to remind folks that the greenway map there's a couple of purposes for it. One, when we asked folks to identify parcels, it was to identify places that people felt like should be protected in some way in order to preserve their existing ecological, recreational, community significance, but also to identify those places that could be enhanced or restored to provide those kinds of benefits. So not every property that is highlighted here is necessarily something that we would pursue as an easement. That's not what this is showing, that every parcel here is one that we would want to protect through an easement or an acquisition. That's not quite the intent. And I would say, like, if you guys are planning on using this at other public meetings, I might suggest just changing in your legend potential easements to identified or suggested parcels. And I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind when talking about this greenway map. Is not just about, I think, conserving these places, although the places that need to be or people feel like we should conserve, obviously that's something our board is really excited to work on. But I wouldn't want everyone to feel like everything that's popping up on here, the intent is to preserve it through an easement or an acquisition, because that's not quite the intent necessarily. It's sort of to ensure we know what are the important places that have significance or could, and then as part of the next step, which we talked about putting in the comp plan, is sort of a strategy to then figure out what are the best ways to ensure these important attributes are maintained into the future. Is it through an easement or is it through something else? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that was clear to everyone that might be watching, that this is not meant to be a just kind of protection map.
I think
Eric, how are you going to describe this in the comp plan? I mean, just so people don't panic and look at it and think, oh my gosh, you're going to take all my property.
Yeah, that's we don't have that description yet. I mean, I think what Joanna just described was really helpful to hear, because I think that's going to have to be part of it. Just that these we are introducing in our future land use map. We have a it's hard to see here. We have a category called environmental enhancement, which is something that does gather. I mean, it gathers a lot of sites that are either already preserved or won't ever be developed for various reasons, and in some cases, some sites where that's the intent for the comprehensive plan is putting out there, that should be an environmental enhancement area. So I think we need to link up the greenway map here. I think that's probably a key aspect of it. But as I'm talking, I'm realizing, I think our next step is really to zero in on those sites that might be where it's not, there may be some difference of opinion about the best use from the owner's perspective. And because there might be a very few number of those sites, I think the majority of them are probably sites that don't make a whole lot of sense for development, or
it's a case where maybe you could develop in part of the parcel, but
yeah,
not, and this would help
right.
people focus where they want to do their development on their parcel.
Is it
Yeah.
fair to say that the first map, the green map before you moved to is it all the open spaced undeveloped land in the city, or it's some subset of that?
It's a subset. And for example, and it's probably just because these are only suggestions that came from people. But like, for example, with this tributary to Weems Creek here, the future public works site is going to be somewhere around here. And there's gaps in here that didn't, these were just, these were drawn by people originally, and we tried to redraw them to follow property lines. But, there's a piece here that's was part of, I think, the forest conservation tract for a development that's right along Capitol Drive here, that's under construct, an affordable housing development. And, so this piece was they're protecting this piece here along West Street. So that should be, I think, part of this. It needs to be enhanced. That's a perfect example, I think, of a site that it is protected, but if you look at it today, it's got incised stream channel and it's full of trash, and there was a cleanup there, I think, on Earth Day, so it may look a bit better today. But
Eric,
anyway.
just on that site, that affordable housing part, my understanding was you all made them leave a easement for the potential trail. So ultimately, that should be on there, shouldn't it? As you're trying to string together pieces.
Yeah, no, exactly. It should be on here, and the only reason it's not is just because somebody didn't think to put it on so far. But we'll add it, I think.
But since we're trying to build trails, it's really important to get all those little strips and pieces on the map, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
I was just going to talk about the next steps that Trudy's alluding to there, Eric, but if you had please keep going.
No, I actually have a slide. This is kind of where I was going to end. I have a slide that just, this is kind of the way I'm thinking about it, based, just on kind of the way we've been discussing it lately. But, we want to look at the map and see if there are other sites that we forgot, didn't occur to us. And so that's a good thing for you guys to do. For the comprehensive plan, one of our interests is in actually defining greenway areas, both at the neighborhood scale and maybe longer corridors that might be a long-term vision. But the shorter ones, the neighborhood scale, I think those should be seen as more achievable, I think. And we want to look at organizing the sites by their primary value. These are just some examples of what those values might be. This next number 4 is sort of getting at those conflict sites, or just basically zooming into which ones are potentially a challenge. And then we have something in the comprehensive plan that's called the Social Vulnerability Index. It's based on the CDC's 15 or so criteria. I'll just real quick. This is what it looks like. I'm using a larger presentation that just has a lot more here, but yeah,
That's why his motto is, I have a slide for that.
But this is what we're talking about with that social vulnerability index. It's something the CDC has used across the country, and the blue areas are the most vulnerable, and based on these criteria. So we did that with the last census data, and this is what we came up with. So we're using this as a base for, so the darker areas again are more vulnerable. We're using this as a base to sort of look at where our parks are, where our public transit is, where our bikeways. It's an equity related tool. So that's something that we think we can.
Since you just went there, I was going to try to behave myself and save it for back. You know, when you started with all the big picture of the mission, I just wondered, can you really in this day and age in either the politics or your good professional conscience do a community comprehensive plan without doing some component of social justice and equity when every little group in the whole wide world is examining their soul, and we would do a whole big comprehensive plan without ever having that as a component of it? I mean, I understand the history of comp plans of land use, but really, are you sure that's gonna fly?
Probably not, probably not. But because we are including it, so.
I think we're just maybe being a little more explicit about it, but.
Yeah, I think not have somewhere that in that slide, you know, where you went through the 3 things with some subpoints. In this day and age, I would think you'd want to get something like that in, because I think we're trying hard in the city, but we ought to articulate it, I would think, in a plan. But
we're also trying to move it more upfront in our adequate public facilities ordinance. So when we're planning future public facilities with or without the help of new development, we look at geography and context and consider those factors too.
Yeah, so I was going to point out a couple of so we've got next steps here, and I was just going to talk a little more explicitly about, for those on the Annapolis Conservancy Board and everybody listening too, kind of the things that we might work on, and some of the things that the city has done and will do. So, and just kind of run through the steps again with you guys. So we talked about sort of the purpose of the Greenway map. Then we put out that input tool, right, where everybody was allowed to sort of circle areas that they thought would be good to include in the map. And I would say, so Sean, I just always want to point out, did a spectacular job of creating that tool and then the initial layer. And then what the city has done since then is what Eric was showing you, that Eric and Eric, I think, worked on really closely together, which was they took all those sites and they sort of, I don't want to say pared them down, but they made them sort of realistic with property boundaries. I'm not explaining that right, but they did a really good job of taking it and sort of making it a little bit more accurate, I guess, at the geographic scale, the parcel scale. And then they've also created that nice spreadsheet that he showed you, which just starts to pull together some basic data about each of those sites that we might be able to use for a number of different purposes in the future. As Eric just mentioned, so some of these next steps, and actually, Eric, would you mind throwing up the map itself?
No problem.
I'm sorry, it helps me think. I apologize.
Yeah.
So, you know, as Eric was kind of pointing out, it's still a little bit, I don't want to say just disjointed. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. I'm having trouble thinking of some good words here, but it's still a little bit checkerboard, some of these sites like you're seeing. And so what we're interested in doing is, in the interest of creating these kinds of greenways, is bringing in, as Eric mentioned, some of those base layers. And this is one of the things our Annapolis Conservancy Board is going to work on together and then share with the city and work on it collectively. But it's to bring in layers, as Eric mentioned, like there's a forest cores and corridors layer, which shows you where those forest corridors currently exist throughout the city. There are layers that show floodplains that we want to bring in, waterways, bring in some of these ecological base layers, if you will, sort of put them behind all these properties that have been identified to figure out what are the connections, right, that we could make. So I want to do that with some of these ecological base layers, but then also with some of the recreational layers, which I think is kind of what Eric is showing you now. But so we can look at where should we draw out where we'd like these greenways to be for ecological reasons, for recreational, and then really importantly, as Eric was just highlighting, for equity reasons. And there are 2 layers that we're looking at with the Annapolis Conservancy Board right now that are park equity access data layers that have been created by the Trust for Public Land and by the state of Maryland. They both have some really good access data that we're looking to do the same thing with, right? So put in underneath the sites that have been identified and maybe make sure we add in places where there isn't enough access currently and look for those sites that help us to create that connected corridor. Does that make sense? I'm explaining that in a way that's sure. Not very believable, Trudy, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
They all sounded like normal English words to me.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Sorry. Too many Zooms. Yes. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. So that's the next step that our Conservancy board is going to kind of work on, as well as, like Eric said, sort of taking another pass at this. So things like you were just doing, Trudy, right? Excuse me, really zooming in and looking at some of these areas that we know well and saying, oops, we kind of missed a place, or hey, that's a city-owned property that would make a good connection. Let's make sure that's a piece of the greenway, right? So those are kind of our two next steps. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Was that you? Oh no, I saw your box light up. Okay, well, feel free to jump in, anybody, if you have a comment. Sorry, the Zoom thing's a bit funky always.
Very interesting, Matt. I mean, these are really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's a first step, but I know when I talked to Sally and Eric earlier this week, sorry, that always sounds funny, Eric and Eric, but sorry, Eric and Eric.
Was it like the new from Bob Newhart show? Daryl and Daryl.
Yeah, there you go. You just need one more. So it's, but it is, I think, like when writing this in the comp plan is, or when talking about it to public audiences is, you know, this is a first take at this greenway map, which is something a lot of people have been interested in, but it is the first take. So it's definitely something, and I saw as one of your strategies in the comp plan right now you're looking at, which is look at the greenway map annually, right? And adjust it or adapt it. So we may not get it perfect on this first run through, but I think it's a really great first step. And I just thank you to the city for really jumping in on a lot of this stuff. And I don't know, I'm really excited, and I'm excited to keep working on these next steps with you guys. Yeah, anybody have any questions? Sorry, I should say that first.
I'm just amused at the irony of Annapolis, Maryland, that in some of its more affluent areas have the least parks. And I mean, that's ironic. That's all. Not, it's probably appropriate, but it's funny. In most towns, I bet you would find it to be the reverse, that they took better care of the affluent. But, you know, the Ward 2 and the East Port, just a total nothing comment. It's just, I mean, it's what we talked about, Sally, years ago in the sector study, you know, the irony of Ward 2 with virtually not a scrap of parkland or open space, but.
Yep, it is true in Ward 2. Ward 8, I mean, they do have a lot of street end parks, which are so small. Some of them are kind of worthless, but at least it's, you know, there's some recreation opportunities there, but Ward 2 is definitely hurting a bit.
And there are definitely some gaps in across all economic sort of levels when you sort of pull in those equity access layers. There are some definite gaps in the city.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I would argue in priorities that putting parks in Ward 2 was a priority, but anyway, it was just interesting.
Oh no, yeah, it is
you know, relative to other needs in the city, but anyway.
Yeah, and I will point out, somebody had mentioned, I think Trudy, that the city-owned parcels, that was another layer that we kind of wanted to pull in as one of those base layers to look at where are some opportunities maybe to connect with places that would be easier than others to start improving potentially. You know, we don't have to worry about certain things. So that's another one of those layers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so this is, any questions from anybody about the Greenway map or what Eric just shared? Okay, I had one more thing for you guys before we let you all go, but yeah, Eric or Sally or Eric, do you guys have anything else that you wanted to share or kind of comment on?
I don't think so. Some of these sites will, you know, need some ground truthing. You know, that's always like one of the issues when you're mapping at this scale. You know, it's we've been trying to, what Joanna was saying before. one aspect of what we've been doing in terms of refining is just trying to snap to existing property parcel lines as much as possible with these sites. But I mean, some of the ones that were suggested, they cut across people's backyards, and yeah, they're not necessarily a bad idea in some cases, but we just want to be ultimately, I think, look at some of these on the ground and see what the reality is. But
no, you're right. That's always part of these mapping exercises. And I like that you put that explicitly as a step, right? Which is, let's make sure we stop and look at a lot of these carefully. And it's not something that's just ridiculous. And so that, yeah. And we're happy to try and help with that as much as we can.
Just think, in a world in which you could get the Wardour Improvement Association to wish to be willing, or the city could require all those entry points to be truly accessible to the public, like apparently it was designed to be. That would enfranchise what, at least six water access, and of course all hell would break loose. But the opportunities we have to open up things in this city, if we could figure out how to do it. Yeah.
Well,
that.
Rebecca Brenia from the West Annapolis Civic Association recently told us that Wardour Improvement Association was willing to hand over that piece of the old rail line that's that now, I guess, because of there was I guess I should bring up the map now. There was a homeowner that conserved a piece of it adjacent to their property, and that kind of breaks up the corridor. So there's a piece from like Shiley to Annapolis Street that is now essentially not connected to Wardour.
That's true. Yeah.
So that
give it up to whom? The city? The city?
Yeah, that was what it was expressed.
That's a wonderful corridor. That should be high on our list of things to work on, especially connecting it to Annapolis Street. That would be great. That's a lovely.
I'm glad to, see, that's exciting.
Yeah, if you haven't, take a walk down that trail from Shiley on. Yeah.
I did that recently, and I kept thinking about that railway place. Like, gosh, that looks like a nice potential trail. Just gonna get on it.
Yeah, it's well used, actually. It's well used.
I saw some people. Yeah, that's awesome, folks. Linda or Tom, do you all have any questions or comments?
No, not at this time. I think it's it's good that we've got it. The city, as old as it is, I mean, we keep trying to put a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid. So it's a challenge, and I appreciate all the effort that they're putting into it.
Yeah. So, I'm laughing at Jackie's cat. Sorry. Just keeps peeking around the corner.
Jackie's cat joins every call we have. He's a real environmentalist, that guy.
He actually joins every Zoom meeting she's on.
Oh, well, there you go.
Something about the Zoom meeting.
Very eclectic, is he?
Yeah.
So this is really exciting. I'm super excited to be at this point. I feel like we're going to make it happen. I know I say that like every meeting.
We are making really good progress. It's remarkable. So
yeah. Let's see. Oh, Linda, did you just come off?
I did. I was just gonna echo what Thomas said. It just, this is tremendous progress, and I can't wait to sort of dig in some more on the maps and ground truth some of that, make those connections. So I'm excited.
Oh, that's great. And for Conservancy board members, so Linda, myself, and Karen had kind of volunteered at our last meeting, I think, to sort of be like a little subcommittee to really dig in on some of this stuff in between regular board meetings. But if you guys want to do it as well, please don't hesitate to do that. Certainly the more eyes, the better. And there will be points, I think, where everybody should sort of stop and really dig in too. But, I'll let you guys know when we're going to get together and work on some stuff if you ever want to join. One other question I think I had for Sally and Eric before you guys go, just jumping back to the comp plan piece. trying to look back through some of the recommendations that we'd sent forward and just see if there's anything that we had, questions about.
I have a question about one of the ones
Yeah,
because
So I'm trying to refresh.
there was a strategy in that document you sent me
I can pull them up.
that said formalize an MOU with the county that we can use the program open space money for acquisitions. I thought we already had that. We don't, because don't we use that? Don't we use the program open space money already for?
So I don't. Sally, are you well versed? I can try.
Yeah,
And there's
we can
no.
usually get money, but it's not guaranteed. And a lot of it is if the county is willing to give it to us. So it depends on the administrations.
Yeah.
It's possible to imagine a situation where the county administration would not want to give us money for something.
Yeah, and I think if Karen were here, she knows the history better than certainly than myself, I should say, on the Conservancy board. But I think there was an instance many, many years ago where something like that did happen. And so this has been something that I know she and others on the board have sort of pushed for. And I know Ashley and some of our board members have sort of worked on moving that now. And yeah, Ashley, if you want to share sort of where that stands, I had that later, but yeah, please go for it.
It's drafted. It's been preliminary reviewed by the county's law office, but they're having trouble getting feedback from their clients in Rec and Park. So I will keep prodding them, but so they have it, they're aware of it. It's just, I think they're trying to wrap up a lot of other stuff right now. And when did the new director take over at Rec and Parks over at the county?
Oh, it's like
last
a
month ago. Yeah, just a few.
So that's also probably gonna cause some hiccups, but I will continue to follow up with their Office of Law, who has seen it and hasn't voiced any concerns. I think they just want feedback from their client.
Sure.
Well, wait till we do the comp plan and then we can take credit for it.
Now wait a minute. No, I'm just kidding. I think
sorry.
Whatever works, man. So that may be, Eric, when you were talking about this one, who knows? Maybe by the time the comp plan is ready, that will have taken care of itself.
So then we can check it off as already implemented.
Yes, you count it however it helps. You go, please. No, I totally get that. That would be awesome.
We're used to being humble on the Conservancy board.
Let's help each other. One of the strategies that's in here, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not for a comp plan, but it's something we've talked about at our last board meeting, so you folks may remember, but it's just for us, and I think all boards probably, but certainly speaking on behalf of the Annapolis Conservancy Board, we just want to do more of what we're doing here today, which is improving coordination between city departments and some of the boards. So in the past, we haven't had as strong connections with the planning and zoning department or other departments and rec and parks. And I think that's something that we're trying to work on, inviting people more to our meetings and hopefully sitting down with you guys more just to better understand how you guys work on things and maybe take on some of these other issues together. So anyway, I don't know if that's appropriate for a comp plan, but it's certainly something that we are.
It is.
I'm glad that you're here today to kind of kickstart that.
I feel like you guys should, coordinate with Parks and Rec as well. I think as a general, I don't know if that needs to be a change to your mission or not, but that seems like something that would be valuable. Anyhow.
So yeah, I don't know if that's.
I don't know how often, but yeah.
Yeah, if that's a good one for your comp plan, or if that's.
I think that it was the first step was identifying these properties that the board has as part of the greenway, because then, by saying these were the properties that we would like to see preserved, a development is proposed or we anticipate one being proposed, we can try to take some sort of action that will be consistent with what we potentially would like to do with those properties. So you've already taken a first step in the right direction as far as meeting that goal with the work you've done on this greenway.
Oh yeah.
Have we gotten this issue of being better coordinated in with proposed developments and being consulted as part of the planning and zoning negotiations, reviews, where and what would be useful to be the preserved land that you require? There was a time people talk about that used to be a fairly strong connection, and then we got sort of out of that loop. We as a group got out of that group, and that seems awfully, not awfully, but it seems important. I mean, it seems like one more way to loop in. I don't know.
So Trudy, what you're talking about is sort of what I was kind of softly alluding to there, but are some of these issues that I know that board members, have been interested in talking more with Department of Planning, and that is one of them. Is many moons ago, I think the Conservancy Board was a little bit more engaged when developments or new projects were submitted to the city, and I'm not sure exactly what the process looked like, but the board was made aware and sort of commented, I think. And this kind of greenway map kind of helps with that. It might help to say, like, if there is going to be a development, maybe there's a way you could do it in such a way as to leave this important piece preserved, or as a trail connection, or what have you. But yes, Sally and Eric.
We now are much better at coordinating with Jackie, and we send her all of our plans that are being reviewed. So this is what we do for Annapolis Environmental Commission, because there was a similar issue. They wanted to see the plans, and we didn't really have a mechanism for them to see them because we don't staff them. We staff Planning Commission, but not Environmental Commission. And so now we've gotten much better about coordinating with Jackie. And then I don't know, Jackie, do you always send every plan to the Environmental Commission, or you pick which ones you think are of interest to them, or where there's some issue?
They do review your submission of what's coming down the road and where things are as far as the forest conservation area delineations and how far along things are. And they do look at all of them, but I try to get them to focus on the bigger opportunities, and also which would be most pertinent to this board too. If there's a property and there's a piece of it where like the developer could put part of it into conservation, you could cluster in such a way that would allow part of it to be in conservation. I think that's what this board would be interested in, making a comment on that particular plan where they see an opportunity and make a suggestion to the developer to try to cluster it or move houses in such a way that they could preserve a portion of property that might even have public access on it. That relates to this next goal that I was looking at here about having green space available to all communities. I know that with the planning he's doing for the comp plan, there's a lot of underlying principles. And is this one of them, Eric, where green space should be within a certain distance of every community?
Yeah, this one, the way we've worded it in the comp plan right now, it's related to how we're updating the adequate public facilities ordinance. So we've actually we have these 3 park types. So there's mini parks, neighborhood playground, and community play fields. Like, is that right, Sally? I can't remember, but basically 3 park types. And the idea is that the mini park, it's 1/4 mile radius. With the neighborhood playground, it's a 1/2 mile radius. And the community play ball field, I think is what we call it, Truxton, Ellen Moyer, what's the third? Well, that's a mile radius. But so the city's pretty well covered on those. It's the smaller 2 park types where there are gaps. And so we have a map that shows kind of those where the gaps are, and the idea.
Could you send that to us?
Sure.
That'd be great to put underneath
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's kind of incorporated as a goal somewhere in the comp plan, it sounds like.
In the community
we
facility.
were working on it as part of the APF for rec and parks, but I think at this point we've decided all of our APF kind of needs to be updated comprehensively, and so we're kind of folding it into the comp plan.
And could you APF is?
Oh, adequate public facilities.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, great. So it's in there. And then again, some of these strategies, I don't know if these are good to include in your comp plan or if these are things you're considering, but we felt like kind of evaluating all city-owned properties for their potential for open space and natural areas might be an interesting kind of step in a strategy that's a little bit more low-hanging fruit. Ways to create some of these little parks or things in places where there might not be as many. Is that incorporated in there, or?
Hold on just a sec. I got a little overzealous and was trying to send you that map. Well, so I don't know that we would want to. It sounds a little too ambitious, Frank. Just like my first read of it, just because. Oh, I'm sorry. City owned. I was.
Not all properties. No. Just city owned.
No, I'm sorry. No, I think it's a good idea. I think one thing you might actually want to expand that to not just city owned, but county and state owned too. I mean, that within the city limits, because I think that there's quite a bit of open space there. We've been zeroing in on because we've been working on this small park upgrade to College Creek. What was formerly known as College Creek Park is now known Robert Eads Park. It's right across the street from the Morris Blum Senior Housing Development that's being also renovated right now. The county has an enormous piece of land adjacent to this site, and there's a small special ed school there, the Adams Academy. I mean, they do very little with that with that site, and so that's I think there are opportunity. We want to work with them and see if there's a way to connect the sites through a trail and other maybe program space, but or just basically restore it, the shoreline. So no, I think actually is a good idea.
Awesome. And you'd mentioned earlier that you'd like the goals and things that you're putting out, you're looking for people to comment on. Are you looking for people to comment on them right now? Are they out? And I apologize.
No, they're not out.
Okay.
We're aiming for the end of this month.
Okay.
So that's website. Yeah, there'll be a notice, and it'll be. I think it should be pretty straightforward and
okay. Yeah, and when you said kind of mechanisms, metrics for the greenway plan, one that popped in my head is like percentage of greenway that's protected via like any of the following mechanisms. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, or how you would pick the percentage, but that was just a metric that I was thinking of.
Well, I wonder if I know it's challenging to do these, with a volunteer board, but if there's any, if you're comfortable setting any kind of metric for how many conservation easements you do in a certain number of years, or I don't know, that would be another way to think about it. That might,
or it'd probably need to be like percentage of new development that has needed its conservation or open space requirements, something like, because we don't know how many new developments.
That's the mechanism. Usually we do these typically through the development process, right?
That's been historically, how they've come to us. We're looking to be a bit more proactive now, and there's a lot of money and sources available, and that we can now use the Critical Area Commission fee in lieu monies for some of the due diligence, which we didn't have access to before. So
that's a good, and hopefully eventually the RIPI program after we do some more work on that.
Yep, absolutely. So that's working with the Naval Academy and Department of Defense is the RIPI funding. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you coming and sharing all this with us and chatting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
You're always
Thanks.
come to the Conservancy Board, so.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. And you're welcome to stick around if you like for the last few agenda items, or feel free if you need to head out. You're certainly welcome to do that as well. So
I don't think we ever had a meeting that had so many high-level city
I
people.
know.
We feel quite paid attention to.
And again,
Conservancy Board's moving on up.
we are look out.
A deputy city manager and all.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah, thank you guys.
you.
Really appreciate your
All right.
time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely.
jump off now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So, Jackie, we have next up, I put on the agenda, you had mentioned there's a potential new easement that you're interested in talking about with the group. And if you want, I can pull up a map. I think most people are probably familiar with where it is, but would that be helpful? Might be able to pull up real fast. I think I've kind of got it ready to go. But so Jackie's going to share about, and I'll make sure I can do this. It's not my forte. So here we are with Annapolis and off of Edgewood Road, right, Jackie? Am I in the right place? There's a new potential easement that you guys are probably aware of if you sort of followed up here, just sort of across the street from Ellen Moyer Park. Is that right? Oh, and Jackie, you're on mute there.
Okay, so, I mean, this is a potential easement. That property is being developed. I believe it's townhomes there, and the developer is trying to cluster them as much as possible already and keep as many trees as possible, and all sorts of different BMPs, swales and rain gardens and that sort of thing. But there's negotiations going on right now that they're part of that property. I think it's about 3.5 acres and maybe a little bit more, maybe put into conservation easement. And I know that the Maritime Museum is across the street. It's from the property. That's their Back Creek campus, their education center. And there's a big restoration project that went in there in their parking lot area that goes down to Back Creek. And I know that the Maritime Museum is part of that discussion as well. I mean, they would obviously like to see it because there's already going to be public access on this property. That's already been negotiated. That's part of their permit. The planning and zoning worked out, and so that can go down to that. You can see there's beach there, there's beachfront there, so that's very nice. And the Maritime Museum sees potential for people parking in their parking lot, crossing the street, and accessing the public access pathway that way. That will go through the kind of forest area. That's very nice. So that I don't have anything more than that right now, because it's just discussions are going on, but. I don't think that we would need any money to put the conservation easement on as far as doing a survey. That would be something that the developer would handle, which is good news. We get one without paying for it.
That's right. Yeah, so this is really great. Again, one of the things our board members were interested in, and we've talked about before, is wanting to know when these new possible potential easements come up. And so this is sort of part of improving that process. So thank you.
I can't remember now, Eric and I talked about a number of different things over the last week. If that one was included, I don't think it was included on the map he has.
It might have been highlighted by somebody, but
because I know there's been a lot of interest in the past, so someone may have included it as a
comment. Yeah.
Put in.
But I'll double check.
I believe so. When we looked at this last week, Joanna, I think it is highlighted.
I think it is on the Greenway map, that parcel. Yeah, I know it's of interest to a lot of people. So, and
that's a very good one.
Yeah, excited that the city negotiated to have public access there to the beach.
Confused. I thought that land there had a sewer thing, all that stinky smell when you go down that road and next to Chesapeake. That isn't.
The wastewater. Are you talking about the wastewater treatment plant?
I don't know what I'm talking about. Whatever it is, it's stinky back there.
Yeah, that's a little further up. That's
crossed. Oh, okay.
The wastewater treatment plant is nearby, but further down the road from there.
Okay.
That's county operated, it's a city county kind of joint operation there. I guess on the right day when the wind's blowing the right way, it would be stinky.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's across from the Maritime Museum. So it's a little, if you're coming from Forest Drive onto Edgewood Road, it's on the right before you get to the piece of property we're talking about.
It's
It's nearby though.
I don't know if you guys can see what I'm circling with my mouse, but I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah.
the wastewater treatment plant.
That's the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so it's across the, yeah. Okay.
And this is the property here. Yeah. And this
Yeah.
is the Ellen Moyer Park where the Maritime Museum has a lease.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, so that's I think really exciting possibility coming up in this area. Let's see
For
if we
a
can-
second, can you go down that map towards the bottom, just to be,
this way?
no, the other way, just to get back to, no, the other way, just that strip of land next to our Bay Forest senior apartments. It's why we have expert, it just back down to the behind the giant thing. Where are we? Oh,
So here's
there-
Giant Foods. So
yeah,
that
see that chunk of land there behind Giant? I don't know what it's said, because we don't own that. Our line is kind of straight down and back. It's irrelevant. I just always wondered, because we had talked about that might make some connection to across the street. Do you happen to know, Jackie, whether that is
I
city?
don't. I'm noting that down to find out who owns that.
For years, there was a falling down for sales sign on it, but it sort of rotted and gave up. And I just seems like something ought to, if it's an opportunity now I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was highlighted in the Greenway map, or I have a note to highlight it from somebody. So we can definitely do that. But Trudy,
Because
that's
we have an easement across the street, right? And it just sort of vaguely seemed
Sort of
like
like
you
there.
could, certainly you could talk us into a pathway through,
Yeah.
the back of Bay Forest Apartments, So anyway, I just,
something
while
to think
we're in the neighborhood, and I had
about.
another thought I'd ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might actually keep this map up for our next agenda item. Asking a lot of my abilities though, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is not my forte. All right, here we go. So now we're kind of moving into our update section. And I do remember we need to go back to approve the last minutes, so I won't forget that before the end. But so MET easements. So we had a really great discussion, several of us. I think Linda, myself, Jackie, and Racine, and there's probably somebody else I'm forgetting. Karen might have also been on that call with some folks from Maryland Environmental Trust to talk about if they would be interested in potentially exploring the idea of holding easements on city-owned properties, looking at Truxton Park, which of course is right here, you guys know, on the areas that are not active recreation, I'll point out again, so we wouldn't put it there. But then also this property here that our board has referred to as Hawkins Cove is city owned, and we've talked about for a long time. So we had a really good conversation. There's a lot of sort of, little due diligence steps that we're doing now to figure out if this is possible. We did hear back from MET that they are open to being the primary and only holder of an easement, which makes things a little bit more simple, and that the Annapolis Conservancy Board could probably continue to monitor that easement for them, and sort of a nice partnership deal there. And there are a few little other pieces we're looking at with these properties. There's something called a reverter clause on them, which sort of we asked the question, does that mean if it's already protected, but we need to do an easement? And I think the answer coming back from Ashley is it protects it from certain things, but it does not prevent, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't prevent pavement from going on the property or taking the trees down or turning it into a really active recreation site. So what exists is something called a reverter clause that sort of ensures that it wouldn't be sold and developed, but it allows for any kind of park and recreation, which could mean the full suite of things, right? So if we put an easement on it, that would help maintain it in its natural state. Of course, with the uses that we want to keep on it for the public. So,
and refresh my memory, this is because we're too connected with the city that we can't be the holder.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you, the one that, you got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Ashley or anybody else that was part of those discussions, there are things that you want to share or any comments?
That's accurate. You captured our conversation. Is the reverter protects it from being used as anything other than like in recreational in nature, but recreational is much broader, obviously, because a basketball court is recreational. So it's protected from becoming townhomes, but it's not protected from becoming a baseball field or a basketball court or paved walking trails. So just depends what level of protection you want.
Mhm. So that's something we can kind of continue to talk about for these properties. Yeah, anybody else? Try to move to the next one. One thing I will point out, so with that property, the Hawkins Cove property, the city has put in a grant proposal to do sort of a visioning effort for this property with surrounding communities and users of the property to sort of figure out, well, what public uses would we want to put on this property? What things are people interested in doing to improve it? And so that obviously we would want to have that all figured out before we really pursued anything like a permanent easement. We want to make sure that the community has that opportunity to provide that input before we would put in place a permanent restrictive easement.
Who funds a grant like that? Assuming
Was it
somebody.
Chesapeake Bay Trust?
Uh-huh.
I think it was Chesapeake Bay Trust. Is that right, Jackie or Racine?
I just vaguely curious. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
You're
Joanne.
saying they fund what? I didn't hear you.
It's the Chesapeake Bay Trust grant that you applied to?
For Hawkins Cove, yes, yes.
Yeah, Chesapeake Bay Trust. And yeah, have you heard anything? Do you know when you'll hear back on that?
The 15th, which is 2 days
Oh,
from
we're
now.
close.
Okay. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, some in that
All right,
range.
well, good
So,
luck. Yeah.
yeah. There was a rumor that someone in the city heard that it looked very good, but
Those rumors always come out. I love that.
we'll
I
see.
always hear that. Yeah, that's good. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that you get it and get to move forward with the process. And yeah, we'll be ready to talk about easements if we get to that point. So that's
Okay.
exciting.
And so on that one, remember the due diligence we have to do is determine which pieces of that are actually owned by the city. So there's some question on that hillside between some of those apartment complexes, you know, if those are additional parcels. And some of the work we may want to do is maybe on I'm pretty sure it's on Hacka property. And so we'll have to work with them if we're going to include those pieces as part of the conservation easement.
Gotcha. Yeah, so lots still to be figured out, but yeah, we're moving, and I think it's kind of exciting. I think we're both interested and engaged in the partnership, MET and the city. So yeah, we'll keep everybody updated. We heard about the MOU with the county, where that stands. I did have a note from Brian Adams that I wanted to share, the city forester, that relates to maintaining our existing easements. So he just wanted to share with our board that he received a request to remove some dead trees and leaning trees in the August Woods community off Primrose Avenue. And I think previously when he was our board liaison, he would let the board know if those requests had come in. And so just wanted to let us know that that was some work that had been requested in the conservation easement. And he just wanted to make sure we were comfortable with that. Any questions, any concern? I don't think we needed a formal motion. I think he just wanted to make sure he was letting us know that there'd been a request to remove some dead trees in the August Woods easement. And if we had any questions for him or wanted to know more, that.
I presume one of our board members has been assigned that for inspection. I don't personally know that piece of land at all, but
Well,
I mean, I
don't know who did that last.
were they, do you know if the request was made because it was those trees posed a hazard to walking or use of allowed uses? The reason I asked too is because if they,
I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that as to whether it's posing a hazard to any of the allowed uses or to property nearby, because dead trees do provide, there are uses, as you guys all know, for dead trees from a wildlife perspective. And even if you take down wild trees in the critical area, you have to mitigate because of the wildlife habitat that they provide. So maybe we should follow up with Brian about why the request.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I remember, I thought when we started out, it was our job to keep our easement areas all neat and tidy and cleaned up of dead things. Well, Karen disabused me of that with a stern lecture about the uses of dead things.
It's good to have good things. They are handy. All right, so I made a note. We'll check back in with Brian about that and see.
Yeah, because I know when I was doing landscaping work on my house, part of it is in the critical area, and I had a number of dead trees, and they were only being held up by the vines, the invasive English ivy. But nevertheless, I have to mitigate for them.
Nevertheless, I like that saying. Yeah, no, it's something important for sure. All right, the other update is about updating our easement information. So last time we had talked about maybe creating a Google, I guess a Google Drive with the city where all of our previous easement monitoring forms could live and other documents and things. And I think someone had suggested reaching out to the IT department, and I just wanted to see if that was we're still comfortable doing that, and if Racine, Ashley, Jackie, I don't know who's appropriate, but if one of you would mind checking in with the IT department to see if that's a possibility.
Yes, I can check into that for you.
Awesome. Oh, great. Okay. Racine, I put your name down. Sorry. That's great. I really appreciate that. And then we can start to make sure all of our stuff is cataloged. So that's it for the updates. I think the only other thing that we skipped over in the beginning is just the minutes from March 11th. I sent out a couple of edits I just looked at really quickly last night. Nothing major. I don't think. Did anybody have any additional edits or suggestions to the minutes from March?
I'll move approval just to move it along.
Okay. Move from Trudy. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, second from Tom, and then all those in favor say aye.
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 And Linda, are you okay to come off mute? All right, Linda.
Hey, I'm here. Aye.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. No, that's okay. All right, so I think we've got some good next steps here at the end of the month. It looks like we're going to release the draft goals for the comprehensive plan. I'll make sure we share that around with everybody. If you guys want to make comments, and we can look back at some of the parts they shared with us today. The greenway map, I mentioned our next steps. So Linda and Karen, I'm going to reach out to both of you guys to schedule a meeting so we can start to dig in there. Again, Trudy, Tom, anybody else that wants to be a part of that, you're more than welcome to. I'll certainly CC you guys and join if you're
I'm
interested.
delighted to join in after you've worked it over in a meeting at some future, because we've already done that a couple of times. So
no, that sounds good. And I think these other pieces, we'll just keep poking away at them. The MOU with the county, MET easements, all that great stuff. So yeah,
so
a lot of good things.
I hate to even ask you this because I don't want to do it, but rattling around in my committee's inbox here is those procedures. Do we still have to play the procedures game?
No, I'm so glad you said that, Trudy. And
I'm just thrilled to bring it up too.
I know. Yeah. So what Trudy is talking about is last time we talked about the Annapolis Conservancy Board needing to create rules of procedure. And Ashley kindly shared with us a lot of great examples, other boards that have those and what they look like. We made sort of a base list of what things we'd want to include in those rules of procedures, what procedures we needed to include in them. And so what I'm happy to do, I think, Trudy, did you volunteer to help draft those?
Oh, I hope not. Do you think?
No, shoot. I thought that's why you brought it up. So don't worry. So
I was hoping somebody else had already done it. If you need me to, of course, I can look at it.
Well, if you're open to it, what I might do is just throw in a few bullets and shoot them over to you to spiff up and just sort of list out the procedures that we do.
I'll try to. Yes.
Yeah, and we can start sharing that around with the group to add to it, or if there's things we're missing. There are a few procedures I know that I definitely want to make sure we get in there.
Actually, have you come in to beat me up and tell me the importance of procedures? I saw you.
No, although they are important. No, I was
I
just
know.
merely saying that once you guys sort of get your outline of what you want in there, I am happy to do the heavy lifting on editing and formatting and cleaning them
I
up.
love that.
Love that.
That's awesome, Ashley. Thank you. We will definitely take advantage of that. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll say again, thank you to, who do we have left here? Racine, Jackie, and Ashley, and the other city staff that joined us today. You guys have just been so helpful. And I just want to thank you again for all the work that you're doing and always being there if I have a weird question. So very much appreciate it.
Question, do we still have a vacancy? We seem like a small crew here. Is that
We have
because
two
we have,
vacancies.
we have two? And is somebody in the city, are there people working on finding us some colleagues here? Like Linda and people who really know this stuff?
Yeah, so Hillary Rafkovich is the community liaison, and she also handles boards and commissions. So I'll make a note to follow up with Hillary to prod her about finding 2 more people for the
I'm sure
Conservancy
there
board.
are hundreds of people out there eager to join us.
That's right. She can't handle all the applications coming in. That
Well, I
must,
do feel like we must come pretty slim to getting majority some, because there's so few.
Yeah,
no, it's a great point, Trudy. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's all I have. Anybody have any questions, comments? Things for
No.
next time?
You're a great chair, Joanne, and a
Thanks,
beautiful
Joanna.
mastery of the English language tonight.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm such a horse around at meetings. Forgive me, guys.
No, you're fine. No worries. Thank you.
How I entertain myself, at least, if no one else.
It happens. No, these Zoom things. You got to do something. Yeah, Linda, did you have something you wanted to share?
Nope. I was just thanking you.
Okay, awesome. All right. Was there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right, Linda.
I'll second.
Trudy, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Hope you